Hello and welcome to Level Up Your Life. I am Mark Black, transplant recipient turned 4-time marathon runner, entrepreneur, and coach. Each week on this show, we bring you strategies, concepts, and tactics to help you take your work, your health, and your relationships to the next level. It's time to begin. Let's get ready to level up. Okay, welcome everybody to, if you're joining us live on Facebook right now, this is a live recording of the podcast and web show called Level Up Your Life. If you don't know me, my name is Mark Black, heart and double lung transplant recipient turned 4-time marathon runner. And each week we do an episode of this podcast, and sometimes we have the opportunity to bring in some pretty special guests, and today is one of those times. I'm very fortunate to have some incredible humans as friends, and they are all some of the most generous people that I know, but this guy takes the cake. And so when I reached out and said, hey, would you do this, take time out of your schedule, he didn't hesitate, as I suspected he would not, and he was just ready to give, as he always is. And so I'm really thankful to welcome to the show Monsieur Martin Latulippe. Martin, how are you?
Very good. It's impossible to say no to Mr. Mark Black, just so you know.
Well, that's good to know. I'll remember that for future requests.
I said yes to you many times and many occasions. You know that for a fact.
So I do know that for sure.
Maybe there's a little, maybe that's your gift. Maybe it's your zone of genius, the way you ask, who you are, the way you show up for the community when you ask for a favor. When you're that kind of person, I think it's so much easier to get some yeses because you lead by example. So when you ask for a favor, it's just normal that people will say yes in return. That's a belief that I have.
Well, I thank you for that. I think it also has to do with who I ask and the generosity.
maybe a little bit as well.
Maybe a little bit. I don't know that you say no to a whole lot of people, but anyway, I appreciate it.
Oh, I do. Ask my wife. I do.
Okay, all right.
It's actually something I had to work on for years, because when you say yes to everybody, to the detriment of saying no to yourself, then it becomes an issue in your relationship, but in business as well. So trust me, more than ever, I say no to a lot of people because what I said, to me, that's a belief that I'll say yes to people who say yes first to themselves, to their community, to their church, to whatever that is. But let's say if I have a friend who's never in the trench, he's never in that giving spirit, he's never in that contribution spirit, and then he's asking me for a big favor. In the past, it was always yes, you're right, I was that kind of person. But now I need to protect my energy. I need to protect my time as well, because I'm a father, I'm a husband, and I also have a business to run, just like you do. So it's something that I had to learn the hard ways, but it was a very valuable lesson. Trust me. I know it's not the topic of the podcast. It's just that it's a lesson that I had to learn the hard ways, and that now, if we have people listening, that sometimes saying no is the right answer, especially if it's to protect your energy. And some type of people, I think it's okay to say no.
No, I think that's actually it's perfectly in line with the topic, because really what this podcast is all about is leveling up. How do you take your work, your life, your health, your relationships to the next level? And what I've learned in my journey so far is that every time you go up a level, more is demanded of you, right? And you have to become a different kind of person to reach, I can remember so many times in my life, and it continues to happen, where I say, why am I stuck? Like, why am I not getting to this next step that I want to get to? And the answer always comes back to who's looking at me in the mirror, right? And how do I need to grow as a person to be ready for that next thing, to be
next
capable
assignment
of doing it, right? And so your point is completely in line with the, if you want to excel at a different level in whatever area of your life, that's going to require different habits, different mindsets, different everything from you than what you've been doing, right?
100%. And then the more you accept that, and understanding that when you do the hard work and when you do the self-awareness and the inner work that is required to have, let's say, that golden ticket to say, like, hey, here you are, let's open the doors of your next level. I'm a big believer that if you don't do the inner work, if you don't do the lonely work of self-awareness, understanding where you might have some personal gains, where do you need to work, where do you need to improve, and also betting on your strengths. If you don't do that kind of work, you'll keep repeating some patterns where you have the impression that you're stuck, that you don't get to the next level, and it gets very frustrating. It gets like, then you start comparing yourself, you start blaming other people, the politics, the government, the banks, whatever that is. I see it all the time. But for the people who take full responsibility, very often this is the first step to get into the next level. And then you get multiple levels that you can access depending on your dreams, depending on your ambitions in life. But big believer of that concept of that, hey, the next level.
So, I mean, right now is a time where a lot of people are going to be tempted to fall into that victim mentality, right? Of because let's be fair too. I think everybody was blindsided by what happened in terms, at least, of how severe it was, and is, because as we record this, it's still happening. We're in the middle of this COVID-19, shutdown that's happening, around the world. So I don't want it to sound like if you're suffering right now, it's your fault, because I don't think that's fair
No,
at all. We have to balance personal responsibility with reality, but we are responsible for our mindset and for how we choose to respond, going forward. And if you're at the level right now where you're making sure that there's food on the table, then that's where you need to be, and that's cool, and we get that. But if you're fortunate enough, like many people who are listening to this right now, to not be, on the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but are maybe a couple of steps above that, what do people need to be doing right now, thinking right now, so that when this is over, they're maybe even doing better than they were before it started? Or is that possible?
well, just to circle back on the on what you said, I think this is very important, that whatever happens, whatever your reality was, let's say super big curveball, difficult, loss of revenues, I think the first thing is just like acceptance. Like there's no need to play superhero. Like sometimes if you put a mask and you try to see like everything will be positive, no, sometimes when the shit hit the fan, it's important to say like, this is the experience I'm doing, and not being fake about it, not lying about it. I think having that level of clarity is super important, because if you are like, let's say, Mr. Positive, when you don't realize that, hey, how am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to deal with this? How am I going to deal with that? So to me, taking full responsibility doesn't mean that it's your fault, but it certainly means that you're the first person to say, how am I going to respond to that? Because that is on me. Whatever is the next step, I think, to have that level of ownership, regardless of the situation, first deal with it, accept it. If you want to cry, cry. If you want to sleep for a couple of days, watch Netflix, fine. We can all throw ourselves a pity party every once in a while. No problem. But after that, what's next? Getting back to your question, like, I believe that this is a very unique time in our history. To so many things can be done, Mark. So many things. And what drives me crazy is that, let's say you start with the pity party, or just like the reality party. That's like, hey, this is not fun here. I don't know if I'm going to have a job after that. I don't know if I'm going to get my clients again. I don't know if some people lost some real revenues. But if the reality party goes on for a week, 2, 3, and your strategy is Netflix all the way, complaining all the way, conspiracy theories posting on Facebook every day, do you realize the missed opportunity to maybe, I don't know, come up with a plan, build a new competency, a new skill, reach out to some friends, mentors, coaches, see if you can serve your community. Like, I think it's Simon Bowen, like one of my mentor. He was explaining a couple of weeks ago that when we face a situation like this as citizen, very often we will look up for some leadership. Okay. We will go like, hey, what will the government announce as a financial package for health, and we'll look up and we'll either get inspired, we'll agree, we'll disagree, but we'll look up for leadership. But very often we forget to ask ourselves, who's looking at ourselves? Who's looking at us? Because the truth is, let's start with responsibility and accountability and level up in your own house. The way you speak, the way you explain what's going on to your kids, the way you take care of your health, of who you are. What do you do with that very unique period of history will determine what's going to happen next. So if your kids look at you and what you do all day is, let's say, not the best choices, no guilt. But remember one thing, in 10 years, when people will ask you, you remember that crisis? What have you done? Ask yourself that question. You are writing that script right now. So in 10 years, when you reflect back and you think about the time, the opportunity that was presented to you, the story you're scripting right now, does it make you vibrate? Are you like, gosh, yeah, it can be also a turning point. It can be a stepping stone. It can be a line in the sand where I'm telling myself there will be a before and after. And for that to happen, what need to be different? How can I reinvent myself? Like just before we went on online, I was sharing with you that in 2008, and when I'm sharing that, just so people understand, I'm not being moralist there. In 2008, when we went through a recession, I don't know if you remember, but in 2008, it was like let's say a little financial disaster. And one of the first budget that was cut for companies and government departments, it was the speaking budget. So in 2008, I found myself with zero contract for 6 to 7 months. And because of that, I had to pivot, but let's just say that word was not popular back in the days, but in the last couple of weeks it was. I had to pivot and reinvent myself. And he just disconnected. So I don't know if you guys are still there, but I had to really reinvent myself and pivot my business. So in 2008, 100% of my business was speaking business in the traditional business model. So I had to travel, take a plane, hotel, airport, and deliver my gig and deliver my presentation to a live audience. So imagine, lost all my revenues for 6 to 7 months. I had to go work in a golf course for a couple months. My wife was pregnant with her second child. I was in a mess, but I had to reinvent myself. And this is at that time that I decided to investigate the online business, diversifying my revenues, learning a second language, because before 2008, I was not delivering English presentations, English keynotes, not able or not even capable to do an interview like I'm doing right now with you, Mark. So in 2008, when that crisis became a reality for me, I had to ask myself, in a couple years, if you look back at 2008, the script you're writing, what will be that story? What important decisions will you take right now that will have an impact in your future? And if I look back, some of the decisions I took in 2008 absolutely changed my business model, changed my life, changed my impact all around the world. So it was a game changer. And I believe that now, with the crisis we're going through as we speak in 2020, this is the exact same situation. We have an opportunity to use that time as a stepping stone, as a turning point, just to reinvent ourselves or to spend more quality time with our family, with our kids, with our wife, with our husband. I mean, this is precious, precious time. And yeah, I think this is very special. This is a very unique opportunity for everybody. I was just explaining that in 2008, just before we went live, that with that recession we had at that time, my business model, 100% speaking, traditional way. So travel, airport, hotel, and delivering my keynote in a room. And all of a sudden lost all my revenues, all my events were canceled. So at that time, just a little bit like I was explaining, I had to ask myself, hey, Martin, in a couple of years, you're going to have to look at what happened in 2008. What will be the story? Because you're scripting that story. It's either a story of me giving up. It's either a story of me throwing the towel and complaining, whining, whatever that is, blaming, or say like, hey, hold on. If I take responsibility, which I was not, but responsibility means, hey, I'm the first person to ask myself, how am I going to respond to that? Because that's my true power. That's how you go to the next level, ownership. And this is at that time, Mark, that I decided to say like, hey, maybe I can start in the future speaking in English and start delivering keynote in English, something that I was not doing back in the days. So I'm like, hey, if I ever get back to speak again, I might be able to double the market. So I will, it's one way to solidify my business model. And the other way for me was that whole online making money in your PJs and selling your knowledge online. It was something very intriguing to me that I knew since 2005, but I was not executing on it. In 2008, I'm like, you know what? I will take that time that I have right now with no gigs, no events, no nothing, to train and to build maybe a new competency. And this is when I started to have like a transition, move a lot of my expertise, a lot of what I share with the world online. And to my surprise, I mean, if I look back at 2008 and I look at that script, I'm pumped because changed my financial life totally. Back in the days, I had client in one country, Canada. Now I'm in 53 countries. When I go to Paris, I'm a nobody in Paris. Last time I went to Paris, 1,200 people in the room, sold out. But it's all because of that one skill and one decision I took in 2008. So now, fast track in what we're going through in 2020. I think one very important question people need to ask themselves after acceptance and say like, hey, this is the reality I'm dealing with. It sucks. Pity party, fine. But after that, let's say, hey, I'm the scripter right now of that story. What is it for me? Who do I need to be in that very unique time? Do I need to be a better dad? Who's looking at me? Don't just incline yourself to say like, hey, what the leaders will do. And remember, we all have the opportunity to be leaders. Do I need to be better involved in my community? What's available for me right now? Do I need to learn a new competency, spend more time with my wife, with my kids, whatever that is? Level up. It's not just about financial. It's not just about putting the business full on. No. You know, a lot of people right now, they say like, hey, can't wait we go back to normal. Like I like to tell my clients to say like, but what would it look if you would create a new normal? That's a next level question. What would have to happen? What would you do? What would you say? And it's just like an interesting introspection time that we're going through right now with that confinement and the crisis. That don't get me wrong, we had tough days with the kids, we had tough days with the business, we had tough days where clients are calling and they're panicking, they're losing revenues, they're losing clients, and they're looking to me for solutions when I have to deal with my own issues with my business.
Right.
Don't get me wrong, but at the end of the day, it's a disservice, I believe, to keep being stuck in that mindset of this is not fair. Um, I don't deserve this, and it's not my fault, it's not my responsibility. And what can I do? Look at the government. It's super counterproductive. And at the same time, I have compassion for people who pick that mindset because I used to be like that. I used to be that type of person.
So
So
what did you do? Because yeah, I mean, we as you said, we talked about what happened in 2008, and people in our industry as speakers were going through something then very similar to what's happening now. The same thing happened in 2001 with September 11th. The same thing happened then for a shorter period of time, but still the same issue. And you could argue some people learned the lesson and some people didn't, or some people were more successful at making the necessary changes. What's that first step after accepting what's going on? As I think you rightly articulated, you got to just face reality first. But then when you make the decision to say, okay, I'm going to do something, like I'm not going to be a victim, I'm going to take action. Is there a particular first step, or does that depend on where you're at and where you want to go?
well, for me and my team, it was to get creative with the resources that we have. Because, I mean, it was easy. And a lot of people, that's what they did is they said, okay, what they start thinking about what they lost. They start thinking about, yeah, but I can't do this anymore. And I believe that the minute you start having a mindset like this, there's no room for creativity, because all you keep thinking is, yeah, but but we're limited. But if you shift that mindset and you ask yourself that question, we always ask that question with my team, is that with the resources that we have, how can we make it amazing? With the resources that we have right now, how can we reinvent and blow our client's mind totally? And then we start having ideas that was never provoked in the past, because we didn't have to provoke those new ideas, fresh concepts, fresh, something new for our clients. And I believe that a lot of people, entrepreneur or people, very often they will say like, well, I do it, but we lack the resources. I do it, but the minute you are in that mindset, I think this is not how to get to the next level. And the reason why I'm saying that is a couple of years ago, I don't know if you've read the book, Men's in Search of Meaning,
Mm.
Viktor Frankl.
Victor Franco, one of
So
my favorites.
yeah, so when I read that book, I started to research, a lot of stuff about that man. And one piece of information that I've read back in the days is a story where Viktor Frankl, of course, they had no resources, nothing. Okay, we get like survivor of 2 concentration camps, like it's just like can't even like imagine. And he's explaining that at one point he had like a meeting or whatever with adults, and he proposed the idea that with the resources that they had, it would be a great idea if every adult can share a bedtime story with every kids before they go to bed, because it was a nonsense that the kids go to sleep hearing that kind of terror,
Mm.
of screaming, of crazy horror that was going on in those camps. So from that story, for me, what was inspiring was that in such a situation, it would have been so easy for him and everybody to say like, we're going to die. That's over. But what I love with that story is that even in such a situation of desperation, with that mindset of with the resources that we have available right now, what can we do that is absolutely transformative, uh, moving forward kind of thinking, or really having an impact, making a contribution? Of course, I'm paraphrasing. It's probably not what he taught back in the days, but to me, That's exactly what was awakened inside of me. So I bring that concept in my business, regardless what's going on. It's a financial challenge. It's an issue with some clients, or a challenge with my team. It's like, hey, folks, let's not go left, but with the situation we have right now, what can we do that is absolutely amazing, never done before? So this is where I want to bring my team. And we did the exact same thing here at home, Mark. First couple of days, kids were like, oh, it's a vacation. It was amazing. And then when we said, like, okay, hold on, like, we need a little routine here. We need a little schedule here.
Need
and
some
then
structure, yeah.
Of course, resistance from the kids. We're the worst parents in the world. But like, hey, let's co-create that agenda. What is stuff that we've never done before in that house? That would be just absolutely mind-blowing. You have your say. I have my say. Mama's got her say. And then but if we start focusing on what we lost, what it used to be, and focusing on what it's not possible anymore, like seeing friends, of course, you lose all that creative energy. So for me, very often, this is what I try to bring to the table once I've done the acceptance. And then with that energy, I start planning my next move. Then when I'm in the right energy, I'm like, okay, perfect. Who am I responsible to? The bills I have to pay, what's going on in the next 30, 60, 90 days, what will happen? Because if I start planning in an energy of acceptance where shit is really tough for me, this is not good. This is not good. It's not good. One of my mentor once told me a very, very hard truth. I asked him for a favor, and he said, no. And I said, why? And he looked at me and he said, because I don't trust you.
Whoa.
I said, explain that to me. He said, hold on. He said, I don't trust people who don't take care of themselves. And right now, Martin, you're 35 pounds overweight. And it's not to judge, Martin, but I'm going to tell you a little secret of mine. He said, I don't trust anybody who doesn't take care of himself, including myself. So the lesson he was bringing to the table was like, hey, Martin, right now, if you take an important decision when you don't eat well, you don't sleep well, you don't do this well, don't trust yourself. This is not the right time to make your next move or to plan what's next. So he was not being judgmental. He was just explaining to me that even himself in his personal life, bad night of sleep, bad eating habits for a day, this is not at the end of that day that he will decide what's next for a business or what's next for his personal life. Or you understand the concept. So to me, it was a very profound lesson that, hey, acceptance, cool. Very often, this is where I'm low energy. After that, put yourself in alignment in your energy of creativity, contribution, impact, service with the resources that I have. What's possible? Let's reinvent. And then I plan. Because if I do the planning where it's a tough day at the office, or I don't believe in myself, or I don't sleep well because I'm thinking about all the revenues that I've lost, I don't trust myself.
That's powerful. And I hope everybody who's listening that's sinking in for you, because we all do that, right? We all have those times where we all fall off the rails. We all get to have the detours. We all fall out of our good habits and have bad days, and that's okay. But what you're saying there is really important, is to be self-aware enough to understand I'm in one of those ruts. I'm in one of those bad habit times. I'm in one of those, and now is not the time to make any significant decisions. Like you don't, pull the shoot cord or hit the eject button in your lowest time. You don't go make major purchases. You don't make major business decisions. You don't, you get through it. and get back to where you're in an optimal state so that
Yeah,
you're not making decisions out of desperation or fear or which
exactly.
which
Exactly.
is I think it's so easy to just beat ourselves up because we're feeling those things.
Yeah.
And it's not the feeling that's the problem. It's how we behave when we're feeling those feelings.
Yeah. And sometimes we forget that emotions are only signals. It's like if we have a dashboard, like a lot of people, sometimes they're trying to be rational with emotions. And I get this at a, let's say, logical level. I understand. But if you have kids at home and you're watching this interview and your kids is afraid of doing something and you say like, don't be afraid, like he's looking at you like, yeah, but I feel fear. Like, it's like, what are you talking about? Like, so you can't stop an emotion to make is a neurological way into your mind. But what we don't teach is how do you treat that emotion? Emotions we can deny. Yeah, it will be fine. No problem. It's all good. We can avoid. So you don't look at the bills. You don't look at the clients who cancel the event. So this is not a good strategy to deal with emotions.
Mm.
But what a lot of people do right now, exaggerate. They're amplifying like crazy. This becomes this.
Mm.
And when you do this, I mean, cortisol all over the place. Uh, some people are absolutely no problem. They destroy their reputation on social media, talking about crazy stuff because they're amplifying stuff that, fuck, you have no perspective. Put things into perspective. Stop the drama. You realize you do that publicly, but a lot of people, that's how they deal with emotions. They go and they ventilate, on Facebook.
Mm.
Like, hey, dude, hold on. But to me, the fourth way, the best way that I've learned, and very often, this is how I treat the ups and the downs and the fluctuations of my emotions. Because even if I put myself in the right emotion to plan my next move and my next level, it doesn't mean I don't visit the valley of desperation. It doesn't mean I don't revisit the valley of fear and self-doubt. But when it happens, instead of avoiding, denying, or exaggerating what's going on, I will treat the emotion. Very simple way. First, acknowledge. What is it that I'm feeling right now? Fear of the future, uncertainty. Okay, cool. Isolate that and then ask yourself that question. That emotion that I'm feeling right now, let's call it fear or uncertainty. If that would be a messenger that is sent to me to change for the better, what would be that message that life is sending to me? And then listen. So for me, very often, the answer will be, well, trust yourself more, Martin. You've faced
Mm.
adversity in the past. You know that path. And in the past, you've always overcome it. So don't deny, don't avoid, don't exaggerate. This is just fear and it's normal. But treat it and empower yourself to have total control to say, hey, it's just a message. It's normal to be afraid. But what if that emotion would be a messenger to you to change for the better? What would be that message? I'm asking that question, Mark, in the last 5-6 weeks that we've been dealing with the confinement, because I'm just like everybody. I'm human. Like, you can sometimes, like, I got the doubts. I got like, will it be okay? Sometimes even I worry for my friends, but that emotion is there. It's not even my problem, but I'm still feeling that emotion of, oh my God, I hope he's going to be okay. Hey, okay, you worry right now. That's the emotion. If that message would be a messenger to change for the better, what would that be? Well, Sylvain is all right. He's creative. He will be fine. If he needs help, he's going to ask. Your job is just to offer, to say like, hey, if you need something, I'm here. But if we keep the emotions and we don't deal with it, I think we go back to that dark valley where we don't do a good use of our time, our energy, our resources, and it's not the optimal way to plan the next level.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And you talked a lot there about the importance of our of self-care and of kind of behaving our way to where we want to be instead of maybe trying to think, like, I think a lot of the times, and maybe this is just me because I've dealt with anxiety issues in my life, and I've learned one thing through that, I think, which is trying to think my way out of problems never works, right? So, not that we need to turn our brain off, of course, but certainly trying to think our way out of emotional problems doesn't seem to work. It seems to create spirals that don't go anywhere constructive. And for me, at least, I've found that if I can behave in a way that is in alignment with who I want to be and what I want to feel, that the feelings come afterwards. Often I find like we have that saying in English that I don't feel like it, right? Sometimes I say, right?
Right.
Um, and often I think the problem is that we expect to feel like doing it before we do it, instead of what really happens in our lives and in our brains, which is the other way around. Right? You got to do it first, and then you get the feeling that you want to feel, and that might fuel you to do it another time. Exercise being a great
Trust the
example of that,
process. Yeah,
right?
trust the process. Trust the process, and it's probably one of the in 2016 or 2017. I decided to certify myself as a coach. I've done a lot of coaching like throughout the years, because people like they see the kind of success you have. They ask you to be a coach. You coach based on the results you had, based on the experience you have. But I was no coach in reality. And I decided, you know what, I'm gonna go for a certification just to explore the world of coaching. What is it? What kind of structure, methodology? And it blew my mind. And one thing that I've learned while I was training for my coaching certification in neuroscience is never negotiate with your brain. Never. Based on what you explained, this is probably one of the most powerful things that I've learned, that, hey, every day, 24/7, 365 days a year, your brain can, don't get me wrong, optimize your dream, but can be the number one, like
Sabotager, yeah, absolutely,
sabotager of your dream.
yeah.
And I will explain that, but I'm no neuroscientist. But usually, let's say, if we go to the planning phase, how will I get to my next level? What will I do after the confinement and get back to my revenue stream or whatever that is? It's the left brain planning. Like the left brain loves like the structure, the plan. And this is how usually we do goal settings. Like, okay, perfect. I got my plan. I believe in the plan. My coach is supporting the plan. Perfect. And then after that, it's a well-known fact that we're going to ask you maybe to visualize yourself in achieving your dream. So this is the right brain. So like images, like a dream board where you put images of you being successful. Like maybe people are familiar with that, but a lot of people are not familiar with the in French we call that le cerveau médian, the median brain,
Yeah.
and the reptilian brain.
Hmm.
24/7, that conversation is going on in your brain. So let's say if you ever had an evening where you say, tomorrow I start my training, I got my plan, I got my shoes, I got my shorts, I got my t-shirt. Left brain. Right brain, you say, like, you know what, I'm gonna have that the halves, the six pack this summer. You see it, you feel good about it. Or maybe you're planning a little trip to Cancun with your wife, so you want to make sure you look tight by the pool or by the beach. Right brain. Then 6 a.m. in the morning, alarm clock goes on. You have your plan, you have your vision, but here the median brain is all about that feeling, the way you feel, the emotions. That area of the brain goes like, come on, you're so comfortable under the, come on, you stay in the bed, dude. Just take your cell phone. You will have that little rush of dopamine anyways, just like go on Facebook and have fun. And of course, your reptilian brain is all about protecting yourself, fight, flight, or freeze, sees dangers all around. So it'll go like, hey, that if you go run, by the street, you can get hit by a car, or it's cold outside. Like, protect yourself, stay in your bed. But we have no idea. Of course, I'm exaggerating here what's
Right.
going on. But so if we don't learn to shut down, to say like, no, this is not how I want to feel. Be comfortable in my bed. The way I want to feel is proud of myself. Compete every day. Having that sense, when I'm done training, I'll feel like $1,000,000. You need to counterattack with better emotions, better feelings in regards to your plan. And of course, if you start negotiating with your brain, you're not going to go for a run for sure. So what I've learned for me is to, by harmonizing and understanding that your brain 24/7 is having a conversation, even if you don't know. And if you start
Yeah.
listening to that, you will find a bunch of excuses to say, like, you know what? I've done 2 weeks on the diet. I'm doing phenomenal. I lost 5 pounds. I deserve a little Haagen-Dazs. And your wife goes like, hey, you're doing well. Don't cheat. Your plan is good. You're losing weight. But here, your diet tastes like shit. You're eating like fucking vegetables and a little bit of protein. So your median brain goes like, hey, how about some ketchup, bro? How about some mayo? How about you bring me a little bit of something tasteful here? And then you go like, no, 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 I got my plan, I got my vision, it's fine. So you resist. But we all know that willpower, it's something that it's not eternal. So what your right brain will do now is say like, hey, I'll send a little image of Haagen-Dazs in the freezer. But you don't know that the brain is doing that. And so all of a sudden you're watching the Netflix series with your wife, and all of a sudden you go like, hey, Haagen-Dazs coming into your mind. So you go for a little scoop, and here you are, because you negotiated with your brain. I mean, this is, you go back to square one.
So Malta, if you we can only have a couple minutes left. I know you're really busy and you got to get to another call. If you had a couple of pieces of advice for people right now as they are in this sort of gray area, this transition time, um, what would you tell them to do?
Well, ask yourself the question, who's watching you? And be a leader for them and be of service to them, whether it's your immediate family, your parents, your kids, your neighbors. What can be done? Like, I believe, like, even in the worst terrible situations I've been in my life, the moment where I get the most inspired is when I'm in service. Even when I was in my desperate situations, no money, no candy, no nothing, it put things into perspective. It's another way to really shift that energy of throwing yourself a self-pity party, maybe for months. So be of service. Ask yourself that question: who's watching you? Yes, look at the leaders, the government, and everybody, but also ask yourself, who's watching me? Because at the end of the day, some people, you might not think about it, but are looking at you, and you're scripting that story. You're scripting that very unique moment in our history. And at the end of the day, I believe, especially talking about immune system, it's something that is very close to your heart, with your heart condition and your health condition. Take good care of yourself. I mean, we don't know what the future will be, and this is really one shift that I decided to take. That, hey, there's one responsibility I have with the time I have right now, is take a better care of myself, um, physically, yes, but also mentally. We start listening or seeing stories of, 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 of mental health issues, of people being in confinement. This is real. So take better care of your health, take better care of your mind. And if you need help, I mean, reach out. Don't play superhero. Don't play that facade of everything's fine if it's not. Reach out. That's so important.
It is so important. And so, speaking of that, where can people find you, connect with you, get more of your wisdom?
Well, it's Martin Latulippe. Donc, if you don't know how to spell that, it's Martin like Martin, Latulippe, Latulippe. So two P's. It's like the flower. And you can go on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. You'll find me. And if you want to poke me and say hi, just like come and join me. I'll be more than happy to serve.
Yeah, I know you are, and you're pumping out incredible content all the time. So thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate you so much, and the wisdom and the generosity that you bring every time we have a conversation. So thanks so much. I know people are going to benefit a lot from this.
So grateful, man, for you. Thanks for your friendship. Appreciate
Take
that.
care.
Appreciate the exposure, and nice meeting you guys.